with Grant from Ghurka. And Grant, thanks for welcoming us in your very nice new sit-down facility. Can you introduce yourself and tell us about your role at Ghurka?
Yeah, thank you guys, obviously, for coming to visit today. It's a pleasure to have both you here today. Um, and as you said, my name is Grant. I am the VP of Finance at Ghurka. I'm involved in finance, accounting, and operations
Yeah.
across the business.
I just want to say, don't forget operations.
Don't forget operations.
Finance and operations.
Yeah, it's the nuance of the title. It
Right.
is finance and operations, but yeah.
Nice. And for those who doesn't know like what Ghurka does, how would you explain it?
Ghurka is a retailer of luxury leather bags and leather accessories. So could be anything from leather backpacks, duffel bags, to wallets, to notebooks, and a bunch of things in between that. The brand started in 1975. This is actually our 50th year in business, so super exciting milestone for the business. What is interesting from an operational perspective about Ghurka is that most people see us as only a retailer of leather goods. In the background, we have a very complicated supply chain that has required a lot of different operations.
Give us one example.
So,
like one product line.
Yeah, well, kind of one thing I was mentioning before is that most companies are either a retail marketing company or a manufacturing business. And fortunately or unfortunately, Ghurka is in the business of marketing and retailing, and also in the business of manufacturing. And the reason that's the case is we work with a number of different partner factories to produce the leather bags and the accessories that we offer.
Mm-hmm.
And in order for us to run this operation, we're purchasing leather from Europe, over in Italy. We're purchasing hardware from another location, and we are allocating these materials that Ghurka purchases and Ghurka owns to our co-manufacturers, who we then work with, pay them for their labor, their time,
mm-hmm.
to assemble our finished goods. So from an operational supply chain perspective, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. There's a lot of freight forwarding and additional costs that go in to capture the actual cost of goods sold for our inventory. Is not as simple as ordering one finished good and getting that good back. We are ordering and working with factories to
capitalizing costs along the way
to have them do the final assembly, but there's a lot of other components and costs that we need to capture so that we know the true costs of our business.
So curious, you had this complicated purchasing cycle, and then you decided to solve it with a specific tool, which is called
Sin7.
And before we go on about Sin7, like where did you find Sin7?
We found Sin7, I think before Sin7, there was
Deer. They were called.
It was Deer, but even before that, I think previous versions or previous teams at Ghurka were using something called Magento. There was another one, I think, called Trade Gecko. And as the business evolved from primarily ordering finished goods to ordering raw materials and assembling or producing finished goods, those previous softwares didn't meet our needs.
Correct. Nice.
So that's when a couple of years ago we found Deer, which became Sin7. And I've done a lot of research.
You did good research.
I've done a lot of research over the last few years to confirm that Sin7 is in fact the right software that we should be using, because Sin7 is so powerful. It's also complicated, and what we found is that Sin7 absolutely is the right tool for us. It has all the functionality that we need. And if you take the time to learn it, it can become an incredibly powerful tool.
Mm.
Where we struggled was a little bit on using it the right way, optimizing it, understanding the data flow. And that's where we started to feel a little bit like our hair was on fire.
Mhm.
And we discovered that we could benefit from partners, which brought us to Fiskal.
So just back to the complications, like give us one tangible example of a pain point that you'd experienced in Sin 7 that you felt was hard to, well, essentially address yourself. So what's like the one biggest pain point you had with Sin 7 when you implemented it?
Well, I think the biggest pain point for sure was the redundant work or the duplicative work that was required in order to get to our true cost of goods sold. So, for example, we were using previously QuickBooks Online for our accounting purposes. So, when an invoice that's related to our inventory came in, we would capture that invoice in QuickBooks Online. We would track it in QuickBooks Online. We would pay it, and all that activity would be recorded in QuickBooks Online. Unfortunately, if we were to only enter that activity in QuickBooks Online, Sin 7 would have no data to help us track our cost of goods sold for our inventory. So as a result, well, it's important to note that at this time, QuickBooks Online, our accounting software, and Sin 7, our inventory system, were not connected in any manner. So in order for us to actually track our inventory costs with the level of accuracy that we require, we would have to enter the invoice in QuickBooks Online and also enter the invoice in Sin 7 and enter the payment information in Sin 7. So there was absolutely nothing automated about it, and it created additional work for us.
Okay, so duplication.
The same thing could be said for sales invoices. So when we got an order that was processed through Sin 7 from one of our retail partners, there would be the order would be entered in Sin 7 and it would be fulfilled through Sin 7, but the actual accounts receivable process related to that was managed in our accounting software at the time was QuickBooks Online. So again, another example of duplicative work so that the systems were mirroring each other's activity and tracking costs and revenue appropriately.
And let's just paint this in a little bit more, like what other tools do we have in our tech stack? So we had QBO and we have Sin 7, and what do we use to sell?
So our tech stack starts with Shopify as our e-commerce website. So from a selling perspective, we had Shopify. From an accounting perspective, we had QuickBooks Online. We were previously using the invoicing function that was native to QuickBooks Online to send invoices to our non-e-commerce customers. So Ghurka sells directly to customers through Shopify, but we also sell to businesses and retailers. Those orders are handled outside of Shopify. So in order to collect payment for those invoices, we had to use another tool. We started with QuickBooks Online, and for various reasons, we switched to Bill.com. So all of a sudden, our tech stack was Shopify, QuickBooks Online, Bill.com, and Sin 7. So really keeping track of accounts receivable, accounts payable got very confusing and had a lot of duplicative work involved, and there was no real
process being followed.
There was no process. There was process, but there really wasn't a system of truth.
Right, because all of those tools essentially, can has a specific function. Like they can all work together in terms of like we can use bill pay to automate our payments. We can capture our AP for our OPEX in it. And if we have our sales channels connected correctly, all of that will flow through to QuickBooks, which is fine. Like that text can work. But I think what we got wrong initially was using it well, duplicating efforts in them. So not using them as a specific module, but using them, well, not necessarily what they were built for. For example, you said you captured inventory in QBO, which obviously the purpose is to capture inventory in Sin7, right? So my point, just what I'm trying to make is, I can envision an ecosystem of Shopify, Sin7, QBO, and Bull
Mm-hmm.
that all works together.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like they each have their specific function or reason how they fit in. But be it as it may, that's just I want to move on to where we had that, and then we decided maybe there's a different tech stack solution that we now are operating.
One software that I omitted by accident was also ShipStation, which is a critical tool that we use for fulfillment.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, you were saying?
No, I was just asking. So we were discussing like this tech stack that we used, and then you obviously mentioned that you found Fiskal. Before I ask you about where we were and where we've gone, when you found it like Fiskal, what is it? What's the reason that you actually trusted us to help you? Like, can you remember that interaction that made you, want to use an expert to guide you? That at what stage were you like, okay, we need to find someone to help us, and why did you then decide to go with him?
Yeah, well, in fact, the the primary reason that I reached out to Fiskal, or that I started looking for a partner in general, was that we were, as VP of Finance, I was doing the accounting on a month-to-month basis
Mm-hmm.
myself for the company, and it became an overwhelming amount of work that took away from time that could be used to actually grow the business. So I started looking for different partners who could help me with monthly accounting. And as I started going through that process, and when I was doing it on my own, it was obvious to me that because of our tech stack and the way that we had things either set up correctly or incorrectly, in order to do our financials properly, it required data and inputs from a number of different systems, and the amount of work was overwhelming. Hence, I was looking for a partner to help us with accounting. Upon realizing how complex the tech stack has become and how difficult it would be to get our financials correct, it became apparent that a partner who could understand not only the financial aspect of our business, but also the systems aspect of our business would be advantageous. I didn't know that a partner like that even existed. I actually thought, it's very rare, I think, from my experience, that you can either find a systems consultant or you can find bookkeeping and accounting partners. I think upon learning about Fiskal and that you guys have brought the two components of accounting and systems support together, I was extremely excited because explaining to an accountant the different tech stack, the tech stack that we had, and the data sources that they had to use in order to do our financials was just an overwhelming exercise in itself.
Great. Yeah. No, spot on. I think that's a great point. We find in the market that, like you said, that either sit in one lane or the other, and that creates confusion because the one hand doesn't know what the other does. Tell me, do you recall what our first scope, well, essentially what we were set out to accomplish when we started working together? Like, what was that first scope of what we had to achieve for you all?
Yeah, I think the first scope of services, we started talking with you guys and arrived at a scope of work in the second half of the year last year in 2024. And the initial scope of the work was focused on the accounting side of the business, because I had fallen behind. We as a team had fallen behind on our financials, and we wanted to get a clear look at what the financial performance was for the year. So the initial scope was doing a month by month catch up of our financials, producing financial statements using all of our, that tie out to our bank account.
Mm.
So
Strictly
the
now.
initial scope of work was producing financial statements on a monthly basis for the year 2024, and we've continued that part of the scope and added onto it since then.
Correct. Something that's pretty interesting for me with our relationship is that we were on QBO, and then we asked you guys politely to potentially migrate to zero, and you were actually open to it. I'm curious to understand like what made you go ahead with a leap like that, because obviously the North American market is pretty QBO orientated.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just curious to get that. Like, what exactly made you take that leap to like a new accounting software?
Yeah, it was a bit of a daunting leap, I think, changing such a core system that I had been using for several years. But I think what got me interested and gave me the confidence to do it was the types of conversations that we were having when we were initially arranging our initial scope of work. I got very comfortable that you were speaking my language. You knew the problems that I was having. You knew the work that would be required to solve our issues. And I felt confident that this would be a partnership that would be
Mm.
enduring and long term. And I no longer wanted to be responsible for the accounting and doing the work in whether it be QuickBooks or Xero. So knowing that the team at Fiskal recommended and was more familiar with, uh, whether they're more familiar, or
Yeah, you.
the simple fact that they recommended switching to Xero based on the pain points that I was having and kind of the outputs that I was looking for, trusting in Fiskal to lead me in the right direction, and knowing that their team was well equipped to do the work required on that system gave
Mm.
me the confidence
Mm. Yeah, that's
to make that
interesting.
switch.
I actually, that's how I understood it as well. You were like, I don't really mind whatever you guys want to be using as long as you can give me what I need, right?
That's right.
It's like
If
just do
if
what you must and give me my reports.
That's
And
right.
yeah.
If the ultimate goal here is to spend less of our team's time on some of these things, such as accounting and producing financial statements, and if if what that means is our team spending less time in the actual system that's the system or the software that's being used to create our financials and track our financials. I'd rather have the team that's doing the work more comfortable in the software that we're using. There was also a couple different things that you introduced to me about Xero that I found superior to what QuickBooks was offering, such as customizing financial statement layouts, adding in margins. Uh, there was there was a lot of customization that I wanted to do in QuickBooks Online that wasn't available.
Mm.
So through our discussions, learning more about what Xero was capable of doing and customizing it to see the financials in the manner that suits our business,
Industry specific, right?
industry and company specific,
Mm.
the way that we want to look at things. I thought that was an attractive,
Mm.
value added opportunity in Xero.
I agree. Yeah.
My experience, honestly, ramping up on Xero and switching our process from QuickBooks Online to Xero has been pretty seamless. The Fiskal team has done all the heavy lifting, and honestly, the Xero platform is very intuitive. I see why it's popular
Mm.
throughout the rest of the world. It's a great platform, and we've been very comfortable making the switch. There
Mm.
really has not been any lost efficiency uh,
Mm.
from our team finding the information and the reports that we require.
Yeah. Now, I'm glad you're enjoying Zero. I think we're also enjoying the fact that you're on it. Makes our lives a little bit easier. Um,
That's what we were hoping.
yeah, I think, from my opinion, the reason why I also feel Zero is just more like the UI and the UX
Mm-hmm.
is stronger is the fact that it was designed for the cloud, right? It was actually built in the cloud. It was the first, like one of the first cloud-based technologies that were developed way back, where something like QBO was designed on desktop and then they then converted it like
Mm-hmm.
server-based to the cloud. So it wasn't,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? So that migration wasn't as probably as well thought through or designed as something with Zero. But anyway, we're nearing the end here. So two more questions. So the
Sure.
first one would be, so what would your advice be for finance or ops or VP of finance leaders out there that's essentially 6 or 12 months where like behind where you were, like what piece of advice would you have for them?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things for any operating partner, um, founder, or CFO, VP of finance, whatever it may be, is where are you spending your time, and is that the most efficient use of your time? Um, and are you spending time making the systems work for your purposes, or is the systems and the software that you're choosing actually helping you in your operations and making things more efficient? And I think when you when you think ahead to how you expect to grow your business and the different channels that you're going to be using, you want to set up your infrastructure so that once you do start growing and the number of activities that you need to process and keep up with, you want to be set up to scale. And I think the way that we were doing things before was it required a lot of manual work, a lot of duplicative entry, and that's a very difficult and inefficient way to scale a business.
Hmm.
I think the tech stack and the way that we've set up our systems and working with partners such as Fiskal um, gives us the confidence that we're able to scale our business without really any significant changes. And I think that's what's exciting.
Nice. And what advice would you give them when they essentially choose a partner like Fiskal? Like, what is that thing that you felt that you need to look into um, making that decision?
Yeah, I think understanding uh, if you, well, as we were kind of talking about before, are you looking for a financial accounting partner, or are you looking for an operations partner?
So the final question is: any final reflections on your journey so far?
I think one thing that I was hesitant about with Fiscal was I'm here in the United States. A lot of the team with Fiscal is in South Africa, and there's a large time difference between the two. But I think with the the team's responsiveness and and well thought through and organized processes, we've there's been absolutely no gaps. I haven't felt that any questions or issues have gone unanswered. It's really quite the opposite. The fiscal team has been anticipating issues and helping me address them before before I might even think about it. So I think really the way that Fiscal has set up the relationships with their clients is extremely thoughtful and has been a massive value add to our team.
Nice, great. Well, Grant, thanks so much. I think this has been really cool catching up and coming out here, and obviously having Genre here. It's always good, like you said, everything's mostly remote and it's cloud based and it's driven on efficiencies. But at the end of the day, there's also like people behind businesses and like building
Absolutely.
relationships and making new friends in the process is pretty important for us. So we're glad we got connected to you all. And we've got a lot of work to do. I think
For sure.
we like you said, we're trending in the right direction, which is exciting. But yeah, excited for the future.
I am as well. I can't say thank you enough to everyone on the team, from the accounting side to the system support side. It all feels like one team. I know there's a lot of communication and coordination going on in the background, and I really it gives me peace of mind, being able to communicate with the team through Slack in real time. Um, and we've already accomplished a lot, and I know that there's a ton more we can do together. So I'm looking forward to it.
Shot.